Jeff Gordon says the teams need to do a better job reaching fans. But is he practicing what he's preaching? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Today is going to be one of those episodes. I feel like a few years ago, the earlier days of Out of the Groove, we'd frequently discuss growth and talk about why NASCAR isn't as popular as it once was. And after a while, I felt like I was just driving myself crazy. I was just talking in circles, spinning my gears, not getting anywhere. And I couldn't tell if viewers even really cared, because I recall when I was a Matt Kenseth fan, I was a Matt Kenseth fan first, a NASCAR fan second. I couldn't care less about rules packages, quality of racing. All I cared about is whether the 17 or the 20 was up front. So nowadays, I typically cover this kind of topic in smaller doses. We focus on, the TV partners for one episode. We'll focus on the short track rules package a second episode. We'll focus on different markets, Chicago versus North Wilkesboro in a different episode. You got to pick and choose your battles, I've learned. But today we're going bigger picture once again, sort of a blast from the past. I hope you're looking forward to it. We'll get to that story, though, in just a few moments. Real quick, a couple of days ago, we talked Rackley War Racing. This is a playoff team, remember. They made the playoffs this year with Matt DiBenedetto before they cut ties with Matt DiBenedetto. Earlier this week, they confirmed Trevor Bayne will drive the 25 truck at Homestead this weekend. Today, they confirmed Stephen Parsons will drive the truck at Phoenix in the finale. Not sure if this is a hint towards their future 2024 plans, who could get that truck full time, but great opportunity for Stephen Parsons, who's made some Xfinity starts this year. He's driven the 07. He's made a couple starts for Alpha Prime. I know it's a one-off. I know it's trucks, but a good chance for Stephen Parsons to kind of show us all a little more of what he can do. So great opportunity for him. I got to take a comment from my last video from Out of the Crowd real quick, just quickly. And I don't mean to throw this guy under the bus. I've seen many folks make similar comments, but this comment, I thought that Carl Edwards was announced to drive the 25 truck at Phoenix. No, I know what you're referring to. There was a fake Twitter or X account created a few weeks back pretending to be Carl Edwards that announced they were going to drive the 25 truck. And I looked, it had over 1,000 likes. It had a ton of engagement. People really bought it. I don't blame fans for wanting it to be true. I just caution you guys to watch out for misinformation like that. Believe me, if Carl Edwards is actually returning to NASCAR, I will stop whatever I'm doing, sit right here and make a video instantly. My future wife could be having my future child. Don't care. I'm out the door. I'm here. I'm talking Carl Edwards. Okay, no, I'm exaggerating a little bit there. But my point is, if that does in fact happen, it will be big news. So just be wary. Try not to fall for too many of these parody or troll accounts because they are aplenty. The internet is ablaze. Now let's get to the main event. I was reading a Racing America article written by Toby Christie that included some good quotes from Jeff Gordon, Brad Keselowski, and others. Jeff Gordon, VP of Hendrick Motorsports, was among those who spoke at Racers Forum earlier this week. And one of the more interesting ideas he brought up, in his opinion, the race teams need to do a better job themselves appealing to fans. Jeff Gordon makes a football analogy here, quote, Joe Montana, of course, was one of my heroes, and I loved him because he was a 49er. When he left the 49ers and went to the Kansas City Chiefs, I was like, who's the new quarterback? I think we have a role as race teams to build our brand up. Maybe not as much as the star power of the driver, but in a way where drivers, and we've seen this recently with Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., and myself, several big drivers that have huge fan followings stepped away from the sport. And I think it had a big impact on the sport because the fans seem to not have a connection to the team as strongly as they did to the driver. I think Jeff Gordon is exactly right. Most fans care more about their favorite driver than the team, the larger team organization they drive for. And I think we've seen newer teams realize that their brand needs to be at the forefront. Like Trackhouse. Trackhouse is a brand. It's a Pitbull album. It's a go-kart complex in North Carolina. It's the Hail Melon. It's more than just an exciting young NASCAR race team. 2311 Racing is a brand. Obviously, it's piggybacking off the success of the Jordan brand. But give Michael Jordan some credit. He's been in front of the camera recently. He's been at like every playoff race this season. Legacy Motor Club has a brand. Hall of Famers, Jimmy Johnson, Richard Petty, now even Matt Kenseth. New owners, new name, new logo, new young drivers. That's a brand. RFK Racing, since Brad Keselowski came over there, feels like a brand. They're like a package deal. Brad fans, I think, are also Chris Buescher fans, and vice versa. Jeff Gordon's observation is correct, and we're already beginning to see a transition, new, younger teams establishing their own brand. I'd argue that Hendrick Motorsports is actually lagging behind in this department. Hendrick Motorsports is a big brand, but only because they've employed many of the most popular and successful drivers of the past couple decades, and also because they themselves have been extremely successful. They've won races and championships. But Hendrick Motorsports fans, by and large, still have their favorite driver. Like Chase Elliott fans and Kyle Larson fans, by and large, don't really get along. It is interesting to hear Jeff Gordon talk about this, because in his day as a driver and individual, Jeff Gordon had one of the biggest brands on the planet. Now that he stepped into that ownership role, the corporate side of stock car racing, now his focus has shifted towards the teams. He wants the teams to have a bigger brand than they do now. I don't think Jeff Gordon's idea is a bad one, but you do have to take it with a grain of salt when you consider where he's at in his career. Getting back to his main point, though, that teams need to have their own brands, their own fans, beyond just fans of individual drivers. He wants Hendrick Motorsports to be seen as the New York Yankees of racing. Sure, there are A-Rod fans, Derek Jeter fans, Aaron Judge fans, but at the end of the day, they're all Yankees fans. They stick around through and through, regardless of who's wearing the pinstripes. He wants fans to see Hendrick Motorsports the way they see other sports franchises. And I wonder if we're maybe in the early stages of seeing that transition. Like the charter system, from a business standpoint, has in many ways turned these race teams into franchises. The fans don't root for these teams like they're franchises, at least not yet. Chase Elliott fans will always choose Chase Elliott over Hendrick Motorsports. Did any Kyle Busch fans side with Joe Gibbs Racing last year? No, absolutely not. Most Kyle Busch fans hate Joe Gibbs Racing now. But I wonder if we are in the early stages of that transition. Teams like Trackhouse 2311 are building up their own brands. It's not so-and-so Motorsports, it's Trackhouse. Ooh. Legacy Motor Club. Ooh. And then from a business standpoint, the charter system treats them like franchises. So steps are being taken. At some point, maybe fans will buy in as well, and Jeff Gordon's vision, his dream, will become reality. I do think it would be good for the health of the sport if teams had bigger brands. It would make those awkward retirement transition periods easier. But I don't think teams building up their own brand should come at the expense of building up their drivers' brands, because people are always easier for fans to connect with than just a brand. Brad Keselowski, co-owner now of RFK Racing, I also read this in that Racing America article, said that teams are not incentivized to build up their drivers' brands. He explained that, years ago, that responsibility would fall on the sponsors. Like Miller Lite would take responsibility of building up their driver's brand. Nowadays, according to Brad Keselowski, that responsibility has shifted more towards the teams. Keselowski said, quote, "Right now, there isn't really a good return on investment for the teams to invest. It takes a long time to invest in driver star power unless you have some inherent, you think of Chase Elliott, who had the ability to build off a name and brand, but most drivers don't." Keselowski then explained the risk the teams are taking on when they invest in a driver's brand. He said, quote, "If that driver leaves and goes to another team, that's just a complete loss. That's my way of saying that we're not fully aligned at this time as a sport to fully capitalize on driver star power. And because we're not aligned, that creates a lack of really true incentives, and we're not getting enough movement there. But I think it's really important that we create some kind of system that connects all this." Focusing on the first parts, Brad raises an interesting concern, but I guess I'm confused as to what the alternative is. You need star drivers to sell a lot of sponsorship, but at the same time, you're afraid of spending too much time, energy, and money building star drivers in case they leave. You see how that doesn't really make sense? And maybe that's what Brad's talking about, how everyone's motivations aren't fully aligned currently. I'm not really sure. I guess it's not as easy as I'm trying to make it sound. But tying Jeff Gordon back into all this, teams should absolutely try to build their own brands, but that shouldn't come at the expense of building the drivers' brands. The drivers, the people, the humans, the face of your franchise, they are the easiest way to connect to fans. If you, as the team owner, don't want to go out of your way to build up their brands, at least empower your drivers to do it themselves. And this is where Jeff Gordon is kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, I'm afraid, because last week on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Jeff Gordon said he doesn't want his Hendrick Motorsports drivers to be as opinionated or outspoken as, for example, Denny Hamlin. Gordon said, quote, "Denny is trying to do things to stir up conversation, to get people at least having an opinion. Whether it's a positive or a negative one, you have an opinion. The fact that he's embracing that, I'll give him kudos all day long. Go for it. I wouldn't want that to be one of our drivers. It's too controversial. To me, it's a distraction." So we need a little bit of everything. I'm all for the teams focusing on building up their own brands, but over corporatizing your drivers is not the way to do it. If you're not going to take the big risks to promote your drivers, at least empower them to promote themselves, to show as much or as little personality as they'd care to. I feel like Jeff Gordon, Brad Keselowski, and a lot of these owners are both simultaneously spot on correct and also way off base in this thinking. I don't know how that's possible. We all see the ratings, we see the attendance, we know NASCAR is not as big and powerful as it was 10 or 20 years ago. Growing up, I always wanted my friends to get into NASCAR because I loved it. I feel like all sports can kind of teach you things growing up, but NASCAR in particular taught me different things. And going to a racetrack, experiencing these cars in person is unlike just about anything else. So just from that standpoint, I've always wanted to see NASCAR grow. I've wanted to bring it to as many people as possible. Nowadays, though, selfishly, I'm also professionally invested in the future of stock car racing. I'd like to see NASCAR succeed and become more stable and more healthy because it's what my business is now primarily tied to. So my priorities have changed a little bit over the years, kind of like Jeff Gordon's. He used to be a driver, now he's an owner. You can kind of see how his opinion has shifted. I just want what's best for the sport. We talk about building everyone's brands up, but we're not really talking any specifics as to how to make that possible. To kind of end this on maybe a positive or interesting note, Carson Hocevar, about to be a full-time Cup Series driver, he responded to my friends at the Daily Downforce earlier today with an interesting idea. Carson Hocevar tweeted, "Personally, I think NASCAR, instead of just promoting the race with the same ads of crashes and races, pick a driver and their sponsor and give them ad space with commercials like the 2000s that are funny and directly tie into the sponsor, personality, and at the end, promote the specific race. Would also give more value to the company spending money on the track, that NASCAR gives them a kickback to help push, promote, and all while promoting the driver and the race. Dollars and cents probably say that doesn't make sense, but it's an interesting concept, I guess." It is an interesting concept, and NASCAR is just such an interesting sport because it's so heavily reliant on corporate sponsorship, and I'm not just talking about the teams. The teams are fighting the tracks are fighting the networks are fighting NASCAR themselves. You have 3, 4, 5, many different entities all working together in some respects, but also at each other's throats when it comes to trying to snatch sponsorship. Like, sure, you get sponsors like Busch Beer who, sponsor the tracks. They sponsor NASCAR. They're one of the premier partners. They have commercials that air on Fox and NBC. They also sponsor Kevin Harvick. Like, there are a few sponsors that do everything, that touch all the bases. But then some sponsors may look for the best deal. That might come from the tracks. That might be a TV commercial. That might be a full wrap, a full paint scheme. Might not. So it's weird. Everyone's working together, but also competing with one another at the same time. So, I don't know. I don't think we'll ever, hold hands and sing Kumbaya, truly. We can dream of a NASCAR utopia that will probably never exist. So interesting. I hope you all found this conversation, some of those quotes from Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski interesting. I'll link the full Racing America article down in the description below if you want to check out the full thing. But those are just my thoughts. That's all I've got for you. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR every day, pretty much. And thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys go above and beyond to keep this show growing. I will catch y'all again soon. I'll be at Homestead Miami Speedway this weekend, so if you see me at the track, feel free to come say howdy. I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good time. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll catch you in the next video.